My name is Mike Brostoff. I was born the youngest of 4 kids. When I was very young, I received attention unconditionally. Even if I didn't want it, I got it. Consequently, I developed unrealistic expectations of the rest of the world. I was the kid in class who asked a million questions and who always wanted to share every cognition about the material. I always was jealous anytime someone received more attention than myself. If someone didn't give me the attention I expected, then I considered it a rejection. Finally, at the age of 30, I realized I would never get the attention from the rest of the world that I was looking for. So in order to satiate my appetite, I've decided to host my own show on Community Access, where for an hour or half hour, a couple times a month, I am the center of attention. Of attention, as you can see, the title of this episode is My Owl is Dripping, and my guest this evening is Karen Young, and she is I know this is a volunteer organization and there's no such thing as a title, but I guess we gave you the title director for right now. Can you tell a little bit what your organization is about?
Well, Bird Rescue is, as you say, all volunteer. We are avian rehabilitators whose mission is to rehabilitate wild birds and return them into the habitat from which they came.
Okay.
And I forgot where we're going. My God, I'm sorry.
That's
I'm
okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. We're going to still...
What was the other thing I was going to say?
Keep going. We're still going with
okay.
this. It's fine. This is what it show's about.
Okay.
No, I was just going to ask you about, to explain the title. We talked about this ahead of time. So, and the other thing is to explain where you got the term "my owl is dripping."
My owl is dripping. This is an This started out in the early days of my career. I had to take to a veterinarian in Canton several.
I'm sorry to interrupt you real quick, Karen. I just thought of one thing though. You know, I like the way you describe it, but...
Oh, I remember what I was going to say.
Oh, say what you were going to say then.
I'm just going to say our mission is to return wild birds into the habitat from which they came, and we aid sick, injured, and orphaned birds.
Okay.
That's the scope that we cover.
Right. That's what I wanted to say.
Sorry.
That's all right. Now tell us what's the story behind My Owl is Dripping?
My Owl is Dripping comes from from my early days in this. I had to take a load of birds in to see a veterinarian in Canton. It was a very, very hot day, and my car wasn't air conditioned. I had a big basket of baby cardinals. I had a woodpecker. I had 2 or 3 other birds, and we had a great horned owl that had died, and the veterinarian had agreed to do a necropsy for us, an autopsy on the bird. So I was to take this frozen bird in and drop it off when I went in. And it was so hot in the car, I decided to lay the owl over this basket of cardinals to kind of help keep him cool. Yeah. Well, the road was closed. Somebody gave me information about a detour, but it involved a wrong turn. I ended up in 4 lanes of traffic and got cut off. The woodpecker cage tipped over in the back of the car. I'm in 4 lanes of traffic trying to catch a woodpecker before it impales itself underneath the seats of the car. I finally pull over and I call the vet and I say, I'm really sorry, I'm running so late. It's 110 in the car, the woodpecker got loose, and I look back and my owl is dripping. And here was the owl just dripping on all these little baby cardinals sitting in there, and this owl is dripping all over these poor little birds. They were cool.
Well, what's great about that story that I like is that I think captures the whole atmosphere of bird rescue. It's run in your basement apartment.
In my basement apartment, my small basement apartment that has 2 doors, one in the front and one in the back, and one to the bathroom. I take that back, 3 doors.
Okay.
It's small, but it's amazing what you can do in a small space.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what we got when I was there. I visited Bird Rescue many times to get some...
Yes, you did. You're kind of one of the volunteers now, Mike.
Right, exactly. To get some video shots of it. And so I got a little bit of a tour. So as soon as you guys are ready in the control room, we're going to cut to the tour of Bird Rescue. And just let me know when you're ready, and then we'll go to that. But just one thing to say about the tour itself is that my tour captures the craziness of bird rescue. My camera's turning around. So just get the atmosphere of it.
You have to remember through all this that we do about 2,000 birds a year, and we get but at this time of year, we get between 30 and 60 phone calls a day. It's nuts.
Right.
It's nuts.
So we need to keep talking while they get this all queued up. And
one of the things, okay, are we cutting to it? Oh, there we go.
Oh yes,
I
that's
was thinking. Okay, why don't you start, Karen?
hi. This is where it all starts at Miner and Hiscock. We have a baby crow coming in. It's an orphan baby. It's in good shape. I always tell people to look for the little sign down here that says bird rescue because I have only the basement apartment here. We have a lot of birds that have made this trip inside.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Okay, let me see the sign. Get the sign.
And we're using the back door right now.
If you walk in this door, you walk right into the herons.
That's right. We're trying to give the herons their own space, a little peace and quiet.
Yeah. Let me do a quick pan of the neighborhood.
Okay.
It's a very residential area. Let me get a pan of the rest of the house so it's, you can see it's just a regular house.
Very unpretentious settings. We hope to have a wildlife center someday, but until we do, and we make do with the little basement apartment here. Our attempts at home beautification here. Seems we have a branch across our sign. That will never do. Yes, this is a home for poor little lost orphans and sick birds. Yes. You want to go see some crows? We have some nice crows inside for you. I don't think. And look here. Watch what I have in store for you. Would you like to see some crows? Look, another baby. Here you go. Well, welcome to Bird Rescue. You're here on what's typical of our busy season. We've got baby crows being surrogated in this cage and a rehab case over here.
What do you mean by surrogate?
That's a parent. These birds are parenting these little babies, and the surrogates in some cases, like with our cardinals, will also feed the babies. The noise is pretty typical. This is starlings that we're fledging out, meaning that they've come out of the nest, and now they need to learn to feed themselves, and until they do that, we're stuck feeding them. But they are very quick learners, and they're doing very well. We have quite a few in here. We have a surrogate in each of these cages to help the birds along. Over here are our baby cardinals with some surrogates. As you can see, we have two stages of cardinals here. This being the older baby that is now starting to take food on its own. Again, following the example of our surrogates are our older birds. The little babies are not yet to that stage, so they're still being fed by the surrogate parents. Yes. Basically, my apartment serves as a hospital or like a MASH unit for birds. Birds come in here, and as you can see, we have a regular setup here for them, and we do the triage here. We try to examine the bird to decide what's the best next course of action. Any urgent or critical care that we can handle is done here. If it's more than we can handle, they move on to the veterinarians that we use. These are hospital cases in buckets or small babies. You'll notice again we have heat for the very sick or the very young. And again, you'll notice here that our hospital cages are set up so that the birds are facing away from the activity. Here comes the feeding of baby crows. And as you can see, they're ready.
My goodness.
Okay.
This is Catherine, one of our volunteers that comes in and helps. And as you can well see, help is much needed. And basically, this is the MASH unit where they come in. They come in here, and we, for example, here's our bacteria. We were dehydrating some birds today. It's a little warm out. Some of the babies were laying out a long time before we got them in. They come in dehydrated often. And the single biggest problem we have with new birds coming in is that they're cold. And if people find birds, if they do nothing else, keeping them warm is probably the biggest thing.
Okay, and so this is your own space right here.
This is the little space I call home. And it's got my computer and my bed. Those are and a dresser for some clothes.
Okay, and it's off limits to birds pretty much.
Except Ivanhoe and Baby.
Oh.
Ivanhoe and Baby have the run of the house, but they've been taught not to go in the living room. And of course, this end of the house is dedicated to the larger birds. And
Okay.
right now we have two great blue herons in residence.
Okay, and they share the bathroom with you for
Yes.
keeping their feet.
Yes.
Okay.
These birds, and it's also a retreat for them when things get hectic, or if If they're feeling uncertain about somebody who's in the house, you'll notice there is a front door here. We don't use it during bird season. All business comes in through the back door just so these birds can have the seclusion and the quiet that they need.
Okay. Okay, welcome back to Center of Attention, and that was a tour of Karen's apartment.
It's very representative
of the
craziness.
Yeah. It's one of the most wildest things I've seen to see all these birds living there, and we'll get more into it of what it's like for you to live and coexist with many birds later on in the show. But the thing that was amazing is the birds actually seemed happy living there. You'd think that they'd be all fighting, and
we work real hard to create an environment where each bird can maximize its own chances for survival. I'm not the only house that keeps birds. If a bird isn't happy there or doesn't adjust well there, we do have the option of moving it to a better space. A great horned owl might go in my back room or something like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we've done enough birds now. We can kind of figure out what the birds need and what will work for certain kinds of birds. It doesn't work for other kinds of birds. If we have a reclusive bird like a rail, then we might have to move it to a little less hectic space. Also keep in mind, that's kind of like a MASH unit. My specialty is critical and urgent care, so we do the triage there, as the film said.
What's triage? I'm sorry to...
Triage just means an evaluation of what's wrong.
Okay.
It's like your first emergency look at what your problems are, and then once we do that, we try to develop a course of action for the bird that's appropriate to that bird. And sometimes that means that only the critical cases stay at my house for a period of time, or birds that I specialize in, like the herons, things like that. I like doing long-necked birds.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about the herons and get a chance to see the video of them a little bit later on. But how do birds come to you?
People find birds. That is pretty much how it goes. I have found a few in my years, but mostly people find birds. And typically in nice weather, for example, we had a windstorm just a day or so ago. Birds were blowing out the nest down everywhere. The people are, now today it's nice. So what they didn't find yesterday, they're finding today. So we've had this enormous influx of birds right in the last couple of days.
Yeah. Okay, because I know all the answers to the questions, by the way. I'm just saying that for the sake of it. I asked them.
Mike has asked them all at least once, at least once.
A couple times when I videotaped a lot at her place, and I would play back to edit it for the show tonight, and I saw how many times I asked the same questions.
My question to you was, did I answer them the same every time? And you said mostly.
Yeah, mostly. Okay. Now, so people just find these birds then?
Right.
You know,
I've
never found a bird helpless.
You'd be amazed how many people have. And the veterinarians and other places and the Humane Society give out our phone number, so we get an awful lot of calls. Some things we can handle over the phone, get someone to put a bird back.
Yeah.
You know, but basically they find them, and our first question is, can you bring it to us? Because we would prefer that as opposed to having to go get it. Sometimes people can't bring them in. But you'd be surprised how many people. What people don't realize is there are a lot of urban wildlife these days, and a lot of our birds, including some of the hawks and the bigger birds, have become very urbanized. They adapted very well to urban living. Your red tails, your kestrels. We got a kestrel from Hart Plaza in Detroit.
Yeah.
Came down in a snowstorm, blinding, white out they call them, you know.
Yeah. We won't see him here, but
no.
I saw that. But with that, in terms of now the windstorm's an exception, because this is what I thought was interesting. At first I thought, God, you do all this work, and it seems to go against like nature. If these birds were selected to die, then they were going to die. But most of those birds there.
A lot of people ask me, why do you do this? Aren't you interfering with nature? And my answer is, not generally. Almost all the accidents that we see are man-made problems. They fly into windows, they fly into power lines, they get hit by cars, they get into tar. Pesticides. We see an awful lot of problems with toxins from pesticides. Kids play with them. And the domestic cat. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has declared the domestic cat the single largest predator of wildlife in the country. So we see our single highest things are hit by car and attacked by cat. Those are what we see the most of. There are a few natural disasters like the windstorm, but mostly that's what we see. And people interfering with nests. They chop down trees, they make in the spring, they make renovations, and they get into nests, and often, sometimes sincerely they don't realize it. A baby owl nest was chopped down in a tree, and it was in the middle of this tree that was totally felled. And we actually cut the middle section out of the tree and lashed it with big chains to another nearby tree so the owl could finish raising its babies, and that worked. But we had a nest of woodpeckers that was really devastated by a chainsaw cutting into a low part of a tree, not realizing that because the hole was way up here, the woodpeckers were really way down here. 2 were salvaged was all we were able to get out of that nest. But we get, you know, we take what we can. We work with what we can.
And what's the survival rate?
Our survival rate actually is good. It's between 50 and 60%, probably closer to 60, but that's higher than the national average.
Yeah.
It also accounts for the birds that we don't attempt, birds that we can't save or that arrive in terrible shape.
Yeah.
So of the ones we do attempt, that puts us up in a pretty good percentage.
Yeah.
And we also get nature's rejects. A certain amount of these birds are birds that were never born correct. The mothers may have even shoved them out of the nest, or in a batch of ducks, there's usually 2 or 3 that aren't quite right.
Yeah.
And we attempt them. They don't come with a little sign on them that says, don't bother, you know.
Yeah.
So we work on all of them. And, you know, we don't discriminate. So we take all birds, and every bird is given equal attention.
Tell me a little bit more about the I like your non-discrimination, equal opportunity for all birds.
Right. We give all of them. A lot of people ask the question, why do you bother with things like pigeons or house sparrows or starlings? And my first answer is, our mission is the rehabilitation of individual birds. We are not trained to manage habitats. We're not trained to manage all these kinds of things. Our focus is on the individual bird. And secondly, I personally, and this is my personal point of view, not really sure how appropriate it is for us to make some of the decisions that we want to make about what's appropriate. The Audubon Society at one point thought the starling was a terrible nuisance. Their latest literature says that its value as an insectivore, eating so many insects, might outweigh any nuisance value that it has.
Right.
So for those kinds of reasons, we feel strongly that it is our job to stick to each bird. And also our volunteers are compassionate. They love birds and they want to help them all. And I personally adhere to that standpoint.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I like that you're not sitting there and going, only because they're pleasing to us, are we going to spend time trying to work on them.
Plus, where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
You know, when does a bird become too common to save?
Right.
You know, and what's common here, we see a lot of sandhill cranes in Michigan.
Yeah.
And they do at the Platte River. But we were just talking before the program, there are really only 2 big staging areas for these birds in the country. Much of the rest of the country is deprived. So, or doesn't have these birds indigenous to their areas. So again, what do we save? You know, the birds that we value, the eagles, were hunted terribly out west by hunters who consider them a nuisance and still do in many cases.
Yeah.
So who's to say?
Right. And the one thing I wanted to step...
Plus, I'm going to interrupt.
Okay,
One thing that's important to us is that no matter how common or how rare the bird, the life that bird has is the only life it has. And we do not squander that carelessly.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what I wanted you to follow up on, is the whole, I think, even if the bird has a low chance of survival, you know, you talked about you have death with dignity at...
Absolutely. There are birds we can't save. And we can offer we offer euthanasia, which is a solution to hopelessly damaged or suffering birds.
Yeah.
And it's not our first choice for a bird that has a chance. And it's not an easy out because we're busy or we're full. But there are birds that can't be saved, and they are suffering, and they're hopelessly damaged. And sometimes we do have to euthanize birds. And our philosophy is to give them that chance at going out with a little dignity.
Right.
I think we do what we can. If a bird is hungry, if it's cold, we warm it up and we try to feed it, or we do what we can to make that rite of passage the right thing for the bird. We don't handle them, we don't pet them. We try to give them a little privacy and a little space to handle it.
Yeah. I think with that, oh, and the one last point that you wanted to make sure I brought up is that you also serve the public with, you don't want to leave people stranded with birds.
That's right. I always say we are a corporation.
Yeah.
We're a 501c3, and our product is healthy birds. But our clients are really the public that bring us the birds. I always use the analogy a little bit of garbage in that the law says that the public can't keep a bird. The law is very clear on that. You have to be licensed to have them. And they don't know what to do with them, and they're always set themselves up for tragedy because they will die if they don't get the right care. So I say it's a little bit like garbage, that, you know, the law says you can't keep it, you can't bury it, you can't burn it on your property. So the only thing left is to put it out and hope someone will take it away.
Right.
And that's the way we feel about the birds. They aren't garbage, but we're happy to take them from people who are stranded with them. They don't know what to do. And that baby bird has to be fed every half hour, every hour. They aren't equipped to take care of them. And I have a very strong feeling about the fact that we're very much there for the public. And a lot of people really count on us. I mean, they really, and some people arrogantly, they call up and say, well, I have a bird in my backyard, don't you just come?
Right.
You know, like, and we're volunteer, we do the best we can, but we try to work with people in terms of putting birds back. And some people, one lady called the other day, irate, because what do you mean I can't just get rid of a bird on my property that's a nuisance?
Right.
And we said, these birds are federally protected now.
Yeah.
And you can't.
Well, with that, I want to go to another video rolling, and this just gives some idea of Karen's working with the birds and what it's like for Karen to be working with them and some of the birds that she does get there. So when you guys are ready, why don't you go to that video rolling and
We'll
fill
talk in the meantime. I know, I'm getting better at this as we move through this.
Right. It's a very informal show.
I like it. I like it. Here we go.
Oh, really?
And it broke its leg, and it got one eye over here.
Mm.
So we'll have to wait and see on this bird. Right now I'm just trying to keep him clean, and it's a baby cardinal.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look.
You can even see at his young age the little crest already.
Mm-hmm.
There he
Oh,
is.
yeah.
He's an awfully nice little bird.
Now, is that from the injury that it doesn't have any fur? Or feathers?
No, actually, I'm going to show you something here, which this is not a good example because this bird, because of his injury, is looking a little ragged. But if you'll notice, this is a good place to see it. The feathers on these birds and the passerine birds grow in strips. Even as an adult, there will be no feathers here on this.
Oh, wow.
But the feathers will grow out and cover. And you'll see again under here, there are places that are naturally bald on these birds. And again, here the feathers on the back grow in a strip down the back. And then they just fan out to cover the bird.
Yeah.
That's not true for all birds, particularly waterfowl and birds like that.
Yeah.
But for these birds it is.
Huh.
Every half-hour birds, and you can see, now this one's gaping, but it's a reflex. As you can see right here, when I turn the bird, this is, see where the dropper's pointing, this is his
Yeah.
crop.
Wait, if you can. See, I'm having trouble. Okay, there.
This is his crop here, it's full of food. In these little birds we can actually see the crop, and when as he eats, this will diminish. This is a reservoir.
wow.
It's not a true stomach, but, and the birds, now see if I can get them to gape for you. And if
Okay.
we just don't
Gape
worry,
means when they open up their
Right,
mouth really
gape.
wide.
they will gape from reflex. This bird is not hungry, but
Yeah.
he knows when he feels a breeze or the nest to move that mom
Oh,
is
wow.
here.
Yeah.
So he's very quick to be opportunistic and say, here,
Yeah.
I'll take some. And with a mother bird, of course, she makes many trips with small amounts of food.
Yeah.
So they must be prepared to do this every time she arrives. So and quite a newly hatched bird. He's actually several days old now. And He's
Wow.
a nice, vigorous bird. You'll see he's gaping. When he came in, he was not. One of our volunteers worked very hard at rehydrating him and getting him strong again. When he came in, he was very weak. The nestmate to this bird died. Two
Well, look
nestmates
at
to
the
this
wings.
bird died.
They almost look like rubber.
Yeah, when they're little,
Uh-huh.
the legs are very soft. You see?
Yeah.
And one of the problems we have, if they don't stay in the nest when they're little, the legs get splayed or spread out. And one of the important functions of the nest is the other birds huddled together in the shape of the nest keep his legs in the right position to develop correctly.
Yeah.
The same is true for his little wings. You can see the beginnings of what we call pin feathers coming in. See the feather shafts on the wings here?
Uh-huh.
See those little things that look like tubes?
Yeah.
Those are feathers in there.
Wow.
Feathers grow in this part of the shaft in blood, basically, and they pop out and begin. Let me show you on the other bird here. Maybe we can see a better example of how this works. We happen to have 3 crows here in various stages of development, so we can see this very clearly. Here's a slightly older bird. You see how the feathers are coming out of the shafts. You see that?
Oh, wow, they're real thick.
Yes.
What is that? It almost looks like a dust.
It does. It
dust
crumbles. It crumbles. This shaft
Uh-huh.
eventually erodes away into just a dusty. See, just a
Yeah.
dusty. And as they get older, they begin to wear that off or preen that off as they get older.
Wow, those are really big feathers. I didn't realize they had that big
Yeah.
feathers.
Yeah. And then we get to this size. A nice healthy little crow here. Again, all these birds were fairly debilitated when they came in. And here you can even see on the tail is coming out. And again, now look at the development of the feather.
Yeah.
And you see the shafts are starting to break off.
Yeah.
And he wants to go back. He doesn't like being out. He says, I'm too little. You need to put me back.
Okay, welcome back to the center of attention. And one thing to point out with a number of the birds we've seen, it's so sad because I've been editing it over the past few weeks, these presentations, and I would go back and film some more, and I like feel so familiar with all these birds because I was editing them. And then Karen, I would ask, well, how's that one doing? Oh, it died. Well, how, you know, that little cardinal at the very beginning?
We had to put it down.
Oh, that's
The leg wouldn't heal, and a cat had caught it, and the cat bite in the head had probably been more severe than we anticipated, and it had neurological problems, and they were getting worse and not better. And the bird, there's something we concern ourselves with when we decide to keep a bird alive who might not be 100%, and that is the quality of life. What kind of a quality of life can we expect? And the other question is, can it be placed? The placements for these birds have to be legal. They have to be with licensed facilities.
Right.
And if a facility doesn't have if it's a pigeon or a goose, you can't place it. You can't place a red-tailed hawk or a great horned owl that has a serious disability, noble as they are. A red-winged blackbird, for example, there's thousands of them, but they don't come into rehab very often. So I have several places that would gladly take one if we got one in. It isn't always the commonness of the bird that dictates that.
Right. And when you talk about placement, what's the reason why they get placed?
They're non-releasables, and they go to places like zoos or educational facilities that are licensed to keep them. They have to have a state and federal permit to hold or have a bird in your possession.
So that's very important because, like, when I was telling people about your facility, one woman, I said, "Oh, when I was a girl, we raised a robin when we were little." And I'm like, "That's illegal." Like, I didn't know that before.
A lot of people still do it. And the licensing has gotten much more specific and much tighter over the years. And I think rightfully so. It does inhibit the average person from picking up a bird and taking it home and giving it a try. But it's to protect the bird. We have enough expertise now that we can really actively treat these birds and help them, which isn't available to people who aren't trained and aren't networking. The other problem is the Migratory Bird Treaty. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has been determined to interpret and enforce that treaty. That's an international treaty which protects all birds that migrate, and basically the ones that don't, our pigeons, house sparrows, and starlings are unprotected in our area. Everything else is protected. And I have you have to be licensed to have a bird, any part of a bird, its nest, egg, dead or alive, in your possession. You know, the eagle feathers now, the Native American groups that need them for cultural reasons, excuse me, have to apply to the government and get licenses now to hold those feathers. That
was my question. Where do you go to get licensed?
U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Okay.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the State Department of Natural Resources issues the state licenses.
And they just don't, like, nobody can say, hey, I found this robin in my backyard. Can you give me a license for it?
Well, now the licensing is a lot of things. You have to prove that you have some experience. You have to indicate you have veterinary support. You have to have other rehabbers that will say they will help you. You have to indicate what your food sources are going to be. You have to describe your facilities. It's a several-page packet that you fill out.
And so is it one license per bird?
No. It's one license per person. And in our case, our licenses are set up so that we have what we call sanctioned volunteers. And that means they've had some basic training, and then we give them a sanction when we say that their skills are adequate to do hands-on care with birds. And once they're sanctioned, that name and address is turned in to the government, and it's incorporated under our license agreement with the Fish and Wildlife Service and the State Department of Natural Resources. And people who aren't sanctioned by us cannot work under our license.
Okay.
That
makes sense.
And when they say part, they mean part. I was at a recent conference, the National Wildlife Rehabilitators Association conference, and there were people there who were doing research with bird, and they were flying in blood samples from all over, and some of them were coming in from Canada. And they asked the Marlis Bulander from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was there to give a talk, and they said, well, you know, it's blood. And she says, well, parts is parts. So they aren't kidding.
Now, in terms of having birds licensed, the reasons why you have them licensed is for surrogating. And this I found was really interesting, just that the difference between having birds there to help raise other birds that come in versus trying to raise them on your own. And if you could tell some, stories with that.
We keep a very, very small collection of very common songbirds. Okay, a lot of people got in trouble, and this is where some of the licensing problems came in. That years ago, people were using any excuse to keep a collection of raptors or the large birds of prey, when indeed they weren't being. It wasn't an appropriate thing to do. So our collection is a small collection of songbirds, and they're what we call working birds. These birds are not pets. They don't come to your hand. They don't, they aren't pets. We don't take them out and play with them. These are working birds, and their job is to be there, one, to help birds who are very young imprint correctly, meaning when a bird is very little
Yeah.
and its eyes aren't open yet, when it opens its eyes, there's a period of time when it decides what it's going to be.
Right.
And that could be a person if it's incorrectly imprinted, or it could be a robin, which might be real appropriate if it's a baby robin.
Right.
So we try to help these birds imprint correctly. The other reason that they're there is also to help teach the birds to do the natural things. Crows are very bright. They have a great propensity for
Yeah.
tameness. They have a long period of time they spend with their parents. For that reason, we don't hand raise baby crows.
Yeah.
We have a surrogate that will teach them how to skin mice, which I'm very unwilling to do.
Yeah.
So our birds are working birds. That's what they're there for. An incorrectly imprinted bird is pretty much a ruined bird. Sometimes people can use them for educational purposes, but a bird of prey, a big bird, a dangerous bird, if it's incorrectly imprinted, if the bird imprints on you, and
Yeah.
I come up and go to put my arm around you, that bird will attack me.
Right.
So and a lot of these have to be put down, and it's a pity that people don't understand this before they get into imprints.
Yeah.
There's also the issue of tameness. A bird can be tame and not imprinted. It can be imprinted and not tame, which
Right.
even makes it more of a liability. Sometimes we can salvage a tame bird. In fact, often we can.
Yeah.
But we do the best we can with them.
Okay. One thing and one note that I have here that you wanted to make sure, because then we're going to go to video rolling, and we're running a little bit behind tape. Touching birds. You wanted me to make sure that there's a lot of things that
Yeah.
Karen. Let me just say this one point. There were many things. Oh, here we are. There are many things throughout the when I was videotaping Karen saying, make sure we get this on the air. Like all these myths about birds, all these myths
Right.
about Huron Valley Rescue, and there's many I forgot. But the one is touching birds, which is something that I didn't know.
Touching birds, it is a very persistent belief
camera.
that if people touch birds, the mothers won't come back.
Okay.
Are we over here?
Yeah, you're.
All right, I'm looking around. It'll be there somewhere. There's only 3 choices. If we touch birds, that the mother will not come back. That is an old wives' tale. It's a myth. The birds, one, have virtually no sense of smell, with the exception of a vulture, and their chances of handling a baby vulture and her carrying are nil. But
Yeah.
even if they see you with the bird, they're thrilled to have their babies back. That is simply not a problem. A bird will take back a bird that has been touched by humans. Even if they see you holding that bird, they want those babies back. It's amazing. Within 2 or 3, I put a starling back out
Yeah.
after 2 days, and the mother was so overjoyed to find that lost bird, you wouldn't believe it. We had a mother duck that took babies back after a couple of months. She was
Yeah.
injured and had to be separated, and she knew them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, also the whole idea, and this will introduce a video rolling, so while I'm just introducing it, you guys can get it queued up. We have a great example of surrogating, because it doesn't even have to be their own to want to take care of them and raise them.
That's what surrogating's all about, is raising
Yeah.
babies that aren't their own.
Right, and that's what the working birds are there
That's what
for.
working birds are for.
Yeah, you guys have, what we have now, and as soon as you guys are ready, they are ready, so just
There it
roll
goes,
it, of
yeah.
the 2, what are these called? Cardinals.
Cardinals, yeah.
Raising a baby that wasn't theirs.
In this case, both the male
They're not
and
talking.
that should happen. And if she flies off when you're doing it, just go ahead and take them outside under the laundry basket and wait to see. If you can get the mother and the babies, take them somewhere, wherever you want, turn the laundry basket, put them all underneath it, upside down, sit for about 3 minutes so she doesn't, let her get settled down with her babies, very gently remove the laundry basket and take off. That's the best release you can get.
Okay, welcome back. And in the background, with all the birds cheeping,
Yeah.
that was Karen handling a phone call of
I
someone
was going to say, I
trying.
didn't recognize what I was trying to say there.
I remember what you were trying to explain to someone is how they should get their ducks out of their home. But what I wanted to move into, because we are starting to fall behind time, is your personal life, because
Oh, that, yes.
this is
What
most
there is of it.
right. Well, the
This
fact
time
that
of
you
year.
are living and sleeping with birds, and in a moment they're going to put up a shot of a heron taking off from your bed, and they're going to show it frame by frame of this heron flying off your bed, so they'll get it ready and show that. But that was the most wildest thing, is like you explaining what it's like to coexist with these birds.
It's interesting in that in some ways, we're able to create a little bit of an arc over there in,
Yeah.
in what we can do with these animals. I think there'll be a day when we have a wildlife center,
Yeah.
and we're going to look back on this and say those were the good old
Right.
days. Right now, it seems like we're cramped and it's tight, but
Yeah.
I know we're going to look back on these experiences. There is something to be said about learning about animals,
Yeah.
about from being intimate with them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my choice to set up a situation like this, but it has been a chance to really find out what we're doing, really find out what we're living with. And the other thing is, my personal space gets eroded every year. There's more cupboard for more cupboards.
Right.
I keep putting stuff into storage, so there's more space for bird stuff. And I do hold off on my little bed space and my TV.
Yeah.
That's my corner.
Real quick, they're trying to tell me something. Oh, wait. No, you're going to show that frame by frame on the chroma key. So we're going to still talk for a while. We got to work out this communication. Just
Yes.
frame by frame, directly on the chroma key. We won't cut to it. Anyway, so I'm sorry, go ahead. But your
Well,
cupboards keep getting taken up more and more.
Well, the place is small. As you've
Yeah.
been there, it's very small. But it's impressive what you can do with a small space
Yeah.
if you just are determined that you're going to make do. Our program has a policy. We don't turn away any bird. We
Yeah.
don't leave the public stranded with a bird. If somebody has to get stranded with it, better us that has a chance of coping. And so when they pour in, they pour in.
Yeah.
And we have been much fuller than you've been. I had 74 over there the other day.
Oh,
We've
man.
been up to 80 some,
That's
with 3 or 4 volunteers working steadily to
Yeah.
get everybody fed, clean cages done. Fresh fruit has to be chopped every day.
Right.
All of our cages are cleaned, fresh water twice a day, fresh cages, everything
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
changed once a day at least. Plus, there's the triage and the first aid that's going on all the time too.
Yeah.
You know, so I can be standing at the sink stitching a duck, and I was one day. I heard this person say, there was a line of people standing with their little box and their little bird, and I'm standing there working on a bird and trying to sew up a duck, and there's all these people standing, and I hear this voice going, the phone rings, and I hear this voice going, well, I don't know. I'm just here bringing a bird myself, but I'll see if I can find out. we had people coming in just answering the phone. We couldn't get to it.
That is what. So
Really.
How did you first get involved? This is something I haven't even had a chance with all the craziness and learning this. How did you get involved with all this?
I found a bird, and
How long ago was it? How many years?
when I was a kid.
Okay.
My grandfather had a compassion for helping herd animals.
Yeah.
He lived on a farm, and there was no technology then. And we, as a kid, I even had a screech owl and things that people would bring us to
Yeah.
help. But 9 years ago, I found a baby bird, and in fact,
Brought back
Chuck's
your grandfather.
no, but
Chuck's
mother helped me with the first bird I found.
Chuck's the director of
Yes,
the show, who's in
yes.
there right now.
And she helped me with the first bird I found,
Yeah.
and I still have that bird. That bird is Ivanhoe, one of the starlings that I still have.
Oh,
and
is he the
we're
one that purchased that we saw in there
Yes,
purchasing
yes.
on in the little
Yes.
basket? That was
one of the ones that
Ivanhoe.
talks.
Yeah.
And she was my first bird. When I first found the bird, they did to me what I now do to other people. Instead of taking the bird, we take our birds and give them one to go with it and send them home with some
Yeah.
diet. That's how I got started.
Right. And so, how did you learn all this? Did you have
Through the blessings of people like Bev
Yeah.
and the veterinarians that we work with. People were very good to teach me.
Yeah.
And some of our volunteers will thank me now and say, oh, you're so good to share with me or take time to teach me. So I
Right.
say, no, I owe that because people took time to teach me.
Mm-hmm.
The veterinarians have been good to teach us. There's also two national organizations that I belong to where I go to the conferences and there's a lot of
Okay.
workshops and things. That's just coming into forefront now. This is
Yeah.
a new field in terms of being organized. But people taught me, and I had to work hard. I had to go look for information.
Yeah.
I had to ask people to teach me.
So did you have any type of college degree in ornithology? Is that how you say
Nothing like
it?
that. No,
That's
no,
amazing.
nothing.
Because it's amazing, all these
My
facts.
previous career was in rock concerts. I used to be a rock concert
Oh
producer.
my God.
You didn't know that, did you?
No, not at all. Oh my God, that's really wild. Because it's just like, you're like a scientist. I mean, you just know all these terms and it's just overwhelming. Like, oh, so, all these things about birds. These facts that you just, by the way, this and that, and this type of bird does this in this category and that
it's not as hard
category.
as it sounds because if a mechanic works on your car,
Yeah.
you expect him to know all the parts.
Right.
And if you bring me a bird, it's to be expected that I would know all the parts or close to it.
Yeah, but you seem to know more beyond that.
Well,
but I hear what you're saying.
But also, if I make it a point to try to learn something every day, and
Yeah.
sometimes I can learn more than one thing,
Yeah.
over 8 years it adds up.
Right. That's true.
It's just like anything. It's just like what you do here. I wouldn't have any concept of how to begin to do something like this.
Yeah, sometimes I don't know if I do.
And all my stories are not success stories. Trust me. I've made my mistakes.
Okay, and background development knowledge. How did you? Okay, I got that. I guess right now this is the most wild thing with Karen's place, and that is the herons. So why don't you guys get it queued up? That is like the thing that like
we did 19 of these birds last year,
so
and we're on number 8 for this year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to get it queued up. But one thing I wanted to say, this is where it was like when I walked to your place for the first time, these were the images that left an indelible image in my brain that I
think
kept.
everyone's overwhelmed because it's unusual to be this close to these birds, and it's unusual to see them in this setting.
Because they look so natural in the setting.
But
That's
they are
what's
natural.
so weird. Yeah.
We have, like I said, we give them that space.
Right.
And they understand the parameters of having that space.
Yeah. Actually, so are you guys ready yet? Because I think they're going to go to the herons now.
You know, it isn't a wire cage outside, but it's as much as in paradise.
Uh-huh.
That's Rico Beyond, and the one in the bathroom in full breeding plumage is Silky.
Wow. That's just so, like seeing it in the bathroom like that, is just so funny. Yeah.
We don't typically name our wild birds because they're temporary and they come and go. But the herons I kind of do because they're...
That is, and they don't get in fights, or what about I mean, they seem to be coexisting really well.
Sometimes they do. I suspect we have a lucky combination of young birds, males and females, that's working.
Yeah.
Certainly 2 adult males would not, you wouldn't be able to do this. It wouldn't work.
Yeah.
I think Silky is a female. I suspect Rico is a male, and this is a very young bird who's not ready to breed yet.
I really felt the breeze from those wings.
You know, people really don't understand how much air these wings displace.
Yeah.
These are interesting birds too, and they have a very large wingspan, and they're a fairly large-sized bird, and yet they're incredibly agile.
Yeah.
And you can feel the, even with a starling flying overhead, you can distinctly feel the breeze from the wings. The eyes, they have the ability to see at more than 180 degrees on each side, so that their vision actually crosses in the front and the back, so they can see 360 degrees around them.
Yeah.
They can actually fly in these small quarters, though. I had one that was very shy and he didn't like to come in the bathroom, but he could do loops in there.
Wow, loops?
It's very hard to believe.
Yeah.
He'd actually fly over there and do a quick turn and fly back.
Yeah. Okay.
You want some food? You hungry? Come on, let's go get some food. No, go in the other room for your food. Good birds. Want some mice? Now, we could hand feed these birds, but typically we don't.
Let's see.
I'm going to take, while you're doing that, I'm going to take the dog out, so you'll quit whining. Oh, and the...
You know, it looks like the one's eating all the food, Karen.
Is Paradise eating all the food?
I think so.
In the blue bucket, or is he going over to the pool and getting some?
Well, I think he's done with the one in the pool. I may be wrong, but he's now at the, well, it looks like a green bucket.
Which one is eating all the food? The big one or the little one?
The big one.
Okay, then we'll stay right here and let the little one get something to eat.
Okay.
These birds, we try to get them to eat as naturally as we can. This may not look like a totally natural setting, being indoors and all, and being in part of somebody's house, but we do try to create a situation where they have as many natural things as possible. The birds here will eat out of water, which is what they're used to. If you walk in and go around the corner, you can see there is a pool set up for them in the shower. Here comes one. He wants his dinner. Whether you're here or not, he's hungry. And we have perches set up in here. The herons need soft padded areas, so you'll see all the padding on the floors and on the perches in here. It's quiet. I can open windows and doors so they can get a sense of breeze and a sense of daylight and evening coming. And we don't use this part of the house. It's reserved for these birds.
So this is only herons.
This is herons only area in the house.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're back, and we have like a couple minutes to wrap up. What did you want to say? Just real quick, go ahead.
What happened to the slow motion picture of the heron flying?
Oh, you didn't see it.
Oh,
we already
okay.
did it while we were talking.
All right, good, because I think that's a beautiful picture.
Yeah. Wait, where are we at? Okay. Oh, okay. They're on you, so I'll just talk to you. One of the things. Well, wait. I want to talk to Ann Arbor. Okay. One of the things that I want. Okay. Wait. Where are we? Okay. One of the things that I wanted to say about the herons is that they just had so much personality. Watching that back and forth, they're like brothers, basically.
All birds have that
personality.
personality. You don't realize it till you start rehabbing them that everyone has a personality.
Right. Real quickly, I got to wrap this up. If you guys in the control room put up the slate at this point, if you're interested, if you ever have a bird that needs rehabilitating that you found injured, this is the number you can call, and they'll put it up in a second. There we go. Bird rescue. Leave it up for a little while till I say take it off. And also, I just want to talk about.
If they're interested in volunteering, they can call that number?
Okay, yes, they can call that number if they're interested in volunteering, or they have birds to give you.
Yes.
But you need lots of volunteers too, because
Yes,
a lot
we
of people
do.
are bringing birds. That's not the
Yes,
problem.
That's right. We have the birds.
You need the volunteers.
We need the volunteers,
and it's
yes.
a fascinating
And we'll
place.
train them. We'll train them.
We'll train. I'm going to be a volunteer now from being.
No doubt, no doubt. I'm not letting you go again without a bird in a bucket going out the door. We have a little buzzer that goes off if you don't take a bird with you. You got away with it because you had your video camera, but from here on out, you have to take a bird.
Anyway, and then briefly too, the only funding you guys get for this is just, and we're not soliciting funds.
No, we're not. We're not.
But
It's contributions that people give us, but we don't even like to ask people for them
Right.
because we want people to feel free to bring a bird without being
Right.
done for money. If people can
Okay.
share, that's fine. If they can't, that's fine too.
Okay, we got to cut the show.
It was fun.
It was fun. This whole experience has been really fun. It's been neat watching it, living it, the whole
We
bit,
live it.
and
We live
watching
it. Yes. Yes.
So anyway, with that, you guys can roll credits and roll Betty and get that shot of the starling in the bucket. That will be great. Or leave that shot on. That's fine.